Good evening, everyone. You're very welcome to this event, which is organized by Engineers Ireland West. And this is part of the Engineering National Development CPD series. And the series marks the publication of Ireland's current National Development Plan, and it aims to showcase and promote new ideas for engineering practice across all different sectors. So my name is Mcdary. I'm the current chairperson of the West Region Committee, and I want to introduce our three fantastic speakers for today's event on enhanced amenity and heritage. The first speaker is Brendan Heaney, who is a chartered engineer holding the position of technical director with Tobin Consulting Engineers. Brendan has vast experience in building and infrastructure projects throughout Ireland. His works include the feasibility, planning, designing, tendering, construction and handover of large-scale industrial, residential, commercial and sports developments. Our second speaker will be Alison Harvey, who is a programs manager in the Heritage Council with a background in planning and economics. She has over 20 years experience of setting up and running collaborative regeneration programs in Ireland and the UK. Ali set up the Collaborative Town Centre Health Check program in 2016, which is included in Ireland's programme for government and has over 70 partners and 15 member towns. There is a substantial waiting list of towns wanting to join the programme, and Ali also coordinates the new CTCHC podcast series, which has been launched in November 2020. And our final speaker will be Frank Monahan, who is a cultural producer and arts educator with an interest in film, architecture, and the arts. His professional practice includes the design of buildings and set design for film and television. With a long-term interest in the critical potential of design, he established Architecture at the Edge in 2017, for which he has since been artistic director. His independent curatorial portfolio includes projects for the GAA International Arts Festival, the Irish Architecture Foundation, London Festival of Architecture, and others. And he is a regular speaker and moderator on contemporary architecture and design and their connection to society and wider culture. So you're all very welcome. We will start with the three presentations from our panelists, and that will be followed by a Q&A at the end. So please don't be shy. You can submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will address them at the end of the presentations. So you're very welcome. And our first speaker is Brendan Heaney.
Good evening, everybody. I am Brendan Heaney, Tobin Consulting Engineers, and this evening I'm going to give you an overview of the Connacht GAA Centre of Excellence at Bacon, Ballyhonus, County Mayo, and in particular, and I'll go into some depth in relation to the recent construction of the world's largest sports dome at the facility in Bacon, Ballyhonus. So I'll just move through the slides now. Next slide. So the centre is located in County Mayo. It's halfway between Ballyhonus and Knock. It's on a 65-acre site, and there's a further 15 acres available for future development and expansion of the facility. This is a slide taken pre-development. It was taken in 2010 prior to commencement of any works on site. And you can see from the slide that the site itself was significantly overgrown with vegetation, and which gave an early indication of poor drainage and heavy soils. So there was a lot of detailed design and certain designs required to make the site suitable for such a sports facility. So this slide is the existing facilities at the Connacht GAA Centre of Excellence. So the Connacht GAA Centre was developed in 3 phases. The first phase was the external playing pitches, and that included 6 playing pitches, where 1 was a 3G and the other 5 were natural sand. The second phase of the construction was the pavilion building. And the third and last phase was the internal training facility, i.e. the dome that was recently completed in 2020 and opened in 2021. So the Connacht GAA Centre originally opened its pitches in January 2012. The pavilion building followed being opened in December 2012, and the dome facility opened in December 2021. So the centre is the home of Connacht GAA headquarters. As I said, it has one 3G outdoor synthetic playing pitch. It has 5 all-weather playing pitches, they're sand-top ones, 3 of which has floodlights capable of being played at night. The pavilion building includes the dressing rooms, there's a gym, there's a kitchen of commercial scale, there's the Connacht offices, there's a lecture facility there, conference facilities, and around the perimeter of the facility, there's a perimeter walking track of approximately 2 kilometres. The site also has extensive landscaped and planted areas, and only in recent months they planted a further 5,000 trees there on site. So it is quite extensive planted. There's a car park capable of holding 450 car spaces and a bus park for 15 buses. There's an e-charging facility recently installed on site for use by all occupiers. We secured an export license to the ESB for a 300 kilowatt PV panel system, and we installed the original 150 kilowatt of that panels installed in 2021, and the second phase of that is 150 kilowatt, also scheduled for installation in 2022. The 2021 installation was on the roof of the clubhouse, but the 2022 installation is a ground installation. So we're looking forward to progressing that during the year. There's an external seated stand in the facility overlooking the main external pitch. You have the indoor dome facility, which we'll give you more detail on later on in the slides. And as I say, you have the 15 acres for future development for expansion of the facility as demands required. So Tobin Consulting Engineers, what was their involvement? Tobin Consulting Engineers was project managers and client reps for the project. We were the civil and structural engineers on site. We did the quantity surveying in relation to planning and statutory requirements. We dealt with the planning applications, the fire cert applications for the clubhouse and the dome, the DSE for the clubhouse and the dome. We controlled and managed the BCAR commencement and completion notices for all the various permissions. Tobin's project scope for the facility included the initial feasibility, the site selection in relation to the selection of the site, the preliminary design through the planning process. We went on to do the detailed design, and then the project was tendered through the tender process, construction, and ultimately the handover to the client, Connacht GAA. So now I'll just go into a bit more detail in relation to the NUI Galway Connacht GAA dome. So the dome itself measures 150 meters by 100 meters, 150 in length, 100 wide, with a height of 26 meters at the highest point. It's a double skin fabric structure, and there's approximately 200 mil between the two skins, the inner skin and the outer skin. The dome is fixed to a perimeter ground beam. It's an inverted T, and I'll show you pictures of that later on in the show. There are 3 revolving entrance doors to access the facility. The idea of the revolving doors is to minimize the loss of air from the dome. There are 15 fire escape doors. These was a requirement of Mayo County Council. These were required as part of the fire cert application. There's an on-site weather station to alert the smart dome of any weather warnings, whether it's wind, rain, or snow. There's a CCTV system, internal and external. So the dome is continuously monitored both inside and outside. As part of the use of the dome, there's internal performance cameras whereby teams playing and using the facility can be tested for performance. To access the dome for vehicle maintenance or repairs, there's a vehicle airlock. That's a 4 meter by 4 meter. And again, the purpose of this is to minimize loss air while vehicles are entering and exiting the dome. There's an LED lighting system to the perimeter of the dome that's internal. It can be set at different phases, 500 lux, 750 lux, and up to 1000 lux. So these lighting systems meets the standard for a match or a TV standard. The LED lighting on the dome, it's around the perimeter of the dome, and it actually reflects upwards to the roof of the dome, and then it reflects down onto the pitch surface. So there's no actual lighting over the playing surface. It's only around the perimeter of the dome. At the top of the dome, we installed translucent fabric at the top of the dome, so we maximize the use of natural light. So the dome is quite bright during daylight hours, and the LED lighting is only required at nighttime. As part of the dome, you have the inflating fans, you have an air exchange, ventilation system, you have gas heating, which heats the dome up to a temperature of 19 degrees. You have backup generators and fans to ensure the dome is inflated at all times. Therefore, it's a high specification smart dome. So within the dome itself, it has the following facilities. You have a 4G pitch measuring 130 meters by 80 meters. That's the playing surface. The height above the pitch itself is a height 16 meters on the sidelines and 26 meters at the center. The dome by its nature curves from its highest point of 26 meters down to virtually a half meter around the perimeter of the dome, but it's 16 meters over the playing surface. The dome itself can accommodate football and hurling. It has a running track training area to one side, measuring 130 meters long and 10 meters. And that's all lined out as part of the synthetic installation. You'll see pictures of that later on. You have a gym area at one end of the dome, measuring 40 meters by 5 meters, and it has a capacity to hold 30 people at any one time. As mentioned before, you have the performance testing all installed within the dome. You have portable stands internally, currently capable of seating 600 people, and the intention is to increase the number of these mobile stands into the future. Around the perimeter of the playing surface, you have a 2G surface, and you'll see in the pictures later on, it's a blue surface. This is the concourse to perimeter. So this is whereby people can easily walk. It's a flatter, more smoother surface, 2G surface. The dome has a capacity of 5,000 and up to 10,000. Our fire cert we secured for the site from Mayo County Council allows 10,000 occupancy. Other uses for the dome can include conference centre, trade expedition, and the dome itself can be transformed from a pitch playing surface to a conference centre or expedition surface in 48 hours. There's a warranty on the dome. The warranty on the fabric and the equipment is 15 years. The life expectancy, however, is slightly longer at 25 to 30 years. At the initial preliminary stage, other alternative construction methods were looked at, and these were costed in the region of approximately 20 million. The actual dome itself that we installed, the actual build cost was 3.10 million. So now we move and slide in relation to the dome program. So we secured plan mission for the dome itself back in 2017. We secured funding 2018. That helped us to progress to detailed design, which started in January 2019. We went on to tender stage July 2019. We commenced work on site October 2019. It's normally a 7-month contract, but due to COVID, delay in delivering materials and site closing, it took quite a bit longer. So the work was complete in October 2020, which was 12 months, which wasn't a big increase considering the obstacles we had to go through. So the dome itself was officially opened in December 2021 by President of the GAA, Larry McCarthy, and the first indoor competition game was played on it, the FBD League, in January 2022, Leitrim versus Sligo. So in relation to the dome team that was involved, the client itself was Connacht GAA. Project managers was Tobin Consulting Engineers. The main contractor that won the contract for the dome was Prunty Contracts Limited. The dome specialist who was under Prunty Contracts was DBS, Salvini and Company. And the pitch specialist, Sligo-based firm, SIS. So we'll go through a few slides now, which will just mainly drawings and pictures, and give you an indication of the size and the scale and how the dome was constructed. So from the first slide there, the layout plan, you can see the green pitch surface. The 2G is the blue concourse on 3 sides. The darker green on the lower part of the picture is the training area and the running track. There's 3 orange boxes. They are the M&E platforms, which supply ventilation and the fans and the generators for the dome. This slide just shows the general elevations, schematic elevations. You have side elevations and end elevations. And as you can see, the dome starts at the height of 26 meters and reduces down, tapers down to a half meter around the perimeter. There's a few snaps here now in relation to the construction. This is the first site when we started on site. The weather was quite bad back in October 2019. So this was just the site being cleared for construction. I've mentioned before that there was a perimeter beam around the dome, whereby the dome itself is fixed down to this beam. So this is the inverted T beam, which runs right around the beam, around the dome. Its overall length being 0.5 kilometer, 500 meters, all 4 sides of the dome. That base is approximately 4 meters wide, 0.5 meter thick, and the upstand is approximately 2 meters high, 0.5 meter wide. And that upstand projects above the ground by approximately 0.5 meter. And I'll explain on the next slide the reason for this. So this is the next slide, which shows the perimeter beam being completed. And you can see the upstand of a 0.5 meter. Now, we viewed a few domes prior to designing this one, and all the domes, the fabric extended from the height of 26 meters all the way down to the ground level. And they had a problem with machinery around the dome. Sometimes it was causing damage to the fabric. So in our design, we designed in a 0.5 meter upstand, so that the fabric only goes within a 0.5 meter of the ground, thus protecting the dome itself from machinery damage or maintenance damage during its lifetime. So this picture here just shows the sand layers being laid out for the pitch, the various layers, the various stone layers. And that's next slide, please. This is the dome pitch base under construction. The final layer of screenings has been laid. They're getting ready for the carpet to be installed. And as you can see around the dome outside the T-beam, there is a 4 meter pathway. And this pathway allows access in around the dome for maintenance during its lifetime. So this slide, the 4G carpet installation is in progress. You can see the running track to the left-hand side, the lines being laid out for the running track, the pitch itself. It's a carpet, it's a 60 mil pile. It comes with all the lines in place. It comes in rolls, and the rolls are laid out, lined up, and they're stitched on site. As I said, there's a 60 mil pile in the carpet, and into that pile you have to install infill, and it's a combination of rubber and sand. So in this slide, you can see the rubber being installed by tractors and hoppers, and then it's spread on the carpet, and then it's brushed in using brushes. This is a view of the dome from the outside when the dome was being inflated. It's not full height there now, so it's only approximately 50% inflated. This is a picture from inside the dome while it was being inflated also. The dome probably approximately 50% inflated at that stage. This is a slide showing just the sheer scale of the dome. There's a game on the main external pitch in front of the dome, so you can see the height of the people and the dome in the background. So a few aerial views now, and I just point out a few things. So this is aerial view 1. You can see the at the back of the dome, you can see the doors. They're the fire escape doors. On the top of the dome, you can see the translucent sheeting, which allows the light in. And on the right side of the dome and around the perimeter, you can see the existing sandgrass pitches within the facility. This is aerial view 2. Again, this is just taken with the clubhouse and the dome in the background. You can see the sheer scale of the dome relative to the clubhouse. Clubhouse itself, that's quite considerable building. It's a 2-story building, and it's quite substantial size in its own right. And you can see the scale of the dome behind it. In relation to the clubhouse, you can see the roof of it with a parapet wall, and that's where we put the phase 1 PV installation. It's not actually shown in that. The installation was taken after this picture. So this is a view from inside the dome. You can see the seating in blue and the playing surface, and you can see the blue concourse just between the playing surface and the seating. So this is a view from inside the dome when it is fully inflated. The green surface, you can see the 2G concourse blue around it. You can see the fire escape doors, and you can see, you might notice a black panel, a grey panel at the back of the goals. This was when we viewed a few domes prior to us doing detailed design. We found there was an issue whereby players would find it hard to visually see the goalposts on the basis that the dome membrane behind it was white. So we incorporated a grey panel to the back of the goals so that the players can easily see the goalposts and the target. This is a view from the site entrance of the Connacht GAA facility. So again, you can just see the sheer volume, and you can see how the dome has set into the existing landscape. So that's it. In conclusion, like, this is the largest sports dome in the world, and thank you very much for attending and listening.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Very exciting project, and it's great to see, and it looks really well on in the background with the grass. We'll come back to the questions later on, and now I'll ask our second speaker, Alison Harvey.
Thanks very much. Okay, sorry, just get the, is that coming up?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so good evening, folks. Great to be here. Thank you very much. Really nice to work with Engineers Ireland again. We worked with Engineers Ireland on the landscape training course a few years ago. So yeah, it's really, really nice to be here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Collaborative Town Centre Health Check programme that we set up in 2016, and really just to sort of talk about why and how we did it, how I did it. So 4 parts. So I'm going to talk a lot about collaboration, partnership. I'm going to talk about funding as well. Obviously, it's very, very important to get on that pathway to funding, and talk about the benefits and the impact of the Collaborative Town Centre Health Check programme, which I'm going to call the CTCHC from now on. It's a bit of a mouthful. And then just the 4 phases of the programme. So really, in 2016, business leaders and civic leaders started to come to me in the Heritage Council and asked me, is there anything that I could do to help? I had set up the Irish Wall Towns Network in 2005. So it was very much, it came from the business side, the private sector. So yeah, that was really, I didn't have any money in that first year, but you know, I suppose when people come to you and sort of say, can you help? You can't really sort of ignore the call. So yeah, really there's 5 pillars: government departments, local authorities, regional assemblies, the business sector, as I say, and the most critical one is third levels. So because we didn't have any money in that first year, what was a necessity has actually now become our USP, working with all the young people and students. And we've more recently, actually, we started to work with national schools as well. So there's 15 towns in the programme at the minute, and we have a massive waiting list, which I'll come to. So thanks for the introduction. Yeah, 70+ partners. We do workshops, we set up project teams. We basically just try to run the programme as best we can in terms of everybody collaborating and sort of, you know, looking at data and how do we compare the data and how do people perform, not the people, but their towns. Anyway, 15-step methodology, yes, we'll come to that. And then just to say that the Collaborative Town Centre health checks are relevant for various EU directives. And just to say we've been really lucky because a few of our towns have won Bank of Ireland Most Enterprising Town in Ireland award. So that was Tralee, the first one over the line, and then the following year was Letterkenny. And it would have been nice for Dundalk, but the local authority, you know, put in another town. So yeah, it's just, you know, there's a lot of towns in Ireland. So and then more recently, we've just got nice news from EC-ESPON. So it's been selected as a best practice case study, one of 5 across Europe. So yeah, 2016, started the program, started to gather the data, started to create the primary data, map everything. And then as a result of the figures and the data that we were getting, you know, because the vacancy levels were so high, we started to advocate for a town centre first policy. So the first call was in a submission that I wrote for the Heritage Council back in November 2019 to Louth County Development Plan. And then the second call for a CTC HC programme led, looking at town centre first, was a workshop that we did with Scotland's Towns Partnership. So this is the wording that was included in the programme for government in 2020. So yeah, as I say, we started sort of really pushing for town centres first in 2019. Okay, so how do we work? Yeah, a lot of visuals because, you know, I don't have a team as yet, so it's just me running this program. So I work really closely with the graphic designer externally, just trying to sort of get the visuals out there, show people what we're trying to do and how we actually operate. So yeah, the third level institutes there down at the bottom. Business improvement districts, really, really important, you know, to have those reps for the private sector. And then in terms of GIS color coding, one of the things we had to create for step 2 of the 15 steps was a classification system. So we used GODE, but there was no GIS color coding. So we had to actually create this from scratch. So this belongs to the program. All the towns are mapped the same. They're classified the same, which means that we can do that comparison. In terms of the 15 towns, so this is where they're all located. I tried to sort of focus at the time, I suppose, really Brexit was starting to appear. So we were looking for border towns and towns along the west. And then the waiting list, the 45 towns, you can see them illustrated there in terms of the regional assemblies. So we're just waiting for the programme for government really at this stage. You know, the town centre first that we, as I say, advocated for was released in February 2022, but there really needs to be a push on now, you know, to help these towns. Okay, in terms of systemic problems and data gaps, the beauty of the programme is that we've been able to shine a light on what is not working. So the data gaps really are very clear. This is sort of cumulative gaps. So, you know, there's not enough data on land use, floor space, vacancy, building condition, just so important. And I mean, that's really, we obviously want to work with the engineers on that. Looking at the heritage, cultural significance, and who actually owns the building. So there's a rich tapestry in our town centres. What we actually find is maybe some in the larger towns in particular that the ground floor is owned by one owner and the upper floors are actually owned by somebody else. So as I say, it's very, very complex, but that's the, I suppose, the challenging thing about what we're trying to do. So the 15-step process, we've got land use surveys, that is only one step. We've got footfall, but business surveys, consumer surveys, ownership maps, car parking, accessibility. It's just trying to collect all that information, all that data and bring it all together. Okay, so in terms of output, this is sort of some of the examples of the output that we have. So we've got Sligo land use survey. This is step 2. The vacancy rate there is 18.4. You really should be around 5. So it's pretty mad. The vacancy levels in other countries are much lower. So yeah, we really have a lot of work to do. Everything is very visual, as I say. One of the things that we sort of found out about Sligo was that even before COVID and lockdown, a lot of people were shopping online. So yeah, it's just trying to get that data, that intel, as they say. And this is Tipperary's, which we will be launching the full report, the baseline report next month. So their vacancy rate is the highest in the programme, 31.2%. So yeah, it's just, I suppose, you know, the towns, they all want to sort of know where they're at in the league. I sort of tell them it's a wee bit like a football league, but you know, you've got to do something. Like once your vacancy level goes above 11%, and a lot of our towns are way above 11%. So yeah, in terms of pathway for funding, there's a lot of funds out there, different departments. You know, really what we need for Town Centre First is for this to be pulled together. You know, we've got towns less than 10,000 population in the Department of Rural Community Development, and we've got towns above 10,000 population in the Department of Housing. So just to show an example, Tralee, the journey that they've been on. So we started in 2016, met up, did the workshop, first workshop, then started doing the work with IT Tralee Chamber Alliance, and also Kerry County Council. So we launched that, I think it was August 2017, and then a few months later, in November, they won Most Enterprise in Town Award. And then they started to get into sort of, getting into their stride to get the funding. So the HTI, we gave them money from the Heritage Council, and then obviously the URDF. So there's a lot to be done for our towns. TCF is only really the very first step. Support is needed. We have a massive waiting list. We need to set up Ireland's Towns Partnership. The Scottish have this for many years. We don't have this. We need to look at CPO and how do we make it more efficient and how do we make it work properly. Compulsory sale orders, other countries are doing this. Also as well, town centre bids, business improvement districts, as I say, we only have 3 in Ireland and Scotland has 40. So yeah, we're a wee bit slow in the uptake there. Community development trusts, conservation area regeneration schemes, heritage action zones. There's just so much that we could do, so much potential. And then also we need digital dashboards. So just to show you the sort of, those are the webinars that we did last year. We had one on meanwhile use, a really, really good report. We did a webinar on CSO, which had a huge turnout. And then just to really say about the benefits, it's a data-driven program. We're trying to create spatial data, primary data. We don't charge for it. We're trying to link to the EU funding streams, which are obviously, there and really, really important. We're trying to create public value in everything that we do. And essentially what we're trying to do is create local regeneration engines. Regeneration doesn't just happen, so it has to be enabled. And then we're talking about, collaborative processes, participatory democracy, creating a focus for local communities. It really is a huge, as I say, massive collaboration. So really what we're trying to enhance is civic pride. So just to finish off, the 4 key phases, this is what I give the government in January 2020, 2021. So yeah, this is just sort of, envisaging what has to be done in terms of there has to be different phases. So we are actually in phase 1 with the baseline. So that's the CTCHC baseline, so 15 steps. But I actually have the methodology ready for phase 2. So that's getting into the buildings and finding out the building condition. Also looking at the land maybe out the back, saying, can we do infill? Can that pay to do up the traditional building out the front? There's just so much, that needs to be really put in place. Then funding models need to be put in place. We need different housing models. We really need to link to European directives. As I say, there's just so much going on at a European level as well. And then traditional buildings, we need to look at skills. We need to look at, maintenance. We need to look at apprenticeships. That all needs to be created. So yeah, one of the really exciting things that we've done is a Diaspora Network for people who got in touch with the podcast series. So that's really given me hope, and just the people, the caliber of Irish people working abroad, as well as the people that we have in our own country. So yeah, very exciting time for our towns, and I would just urge you to get involved with us. As I say, we just need to lift our towns and do this. And that's just a wee bio about me, sorry. So yeah, that's the 4 phases. So that's really what we want to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ali. That's really interesting. And as you said, there's so much that can be done and should be done that it's really difficult to see where to start. We'll come back to the questions again. And now I'll introduce our final speaker for today, Frank Monahan. So Frank, it's over to you.
Thanks, Magda. Just share my screen. Hope everybody can see that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Thanks very much for the invitation to speak at Engineers Ireland West. It's a privilege to not only be here, but actually because my father was a past president of the organization in, I think it was 1985. So it's quite nice to be here just for that reason. This evening, I'm talking about a project which Architecture the Edge curated for the Galway International Arts Festival in 2018. I have to say the project was designed and built by a team from the Bartlett School of Architecture under the tutelage of Niall McLaughlin, architect, with Michiko Sumi, who together ran the Unit 17 at the Bartlett. So I'll just run through the slides. Okay. So just something very briefly about Architecture the Edge. We are a not-for-profit organisation dedicated to the promotion of architecture as culture centred in Galway. We use our main platform, the Architecture the Edge Festival, to organise and deliver research and design-led programmes at both public and private venues. And we use learning events, live projects and exhibitions to engage with the community. We think we're the leading voice for excellence in the built environment in the west of Ireland, demonstrating how design enhances the quality of life while addressing important issues of society through responsible architecture. And just some of our key missions there on the screen. We wish to create platforms to empower a learned society, make architecture more accessible, promote design best practice and sustainable development, and improve perception of architecture and of the architect locally and internationally. And finally, help shape the quality of our built environment. We have 3 strands, the Architecture the Edge Festival. This year it takes place between the 1st and the 9th of October. The theme will be repair. We have talks, tours, and building exhibitions. And it's great to be back once the restrictions have been lifted and be able to meet people within the community. We also have a schools program called Design Lab, which we run in collaboration with our partners, Matt and Fiona, who are based in London. And we work with schools, primarily transition year students, schools here in Galway City and County, to empower them to help shape their own built environment. And these are some of the projects that we did last year with that. Last year, we also held our inaugural summer school in partnership with GMIT Letterfrac. And it was a 2-week program, and 20 participants met some of the preeminent Irish practicing architects, came to teach different workshops for the participants at the school. So the Ghost Chapel project, which I'm presenting tonight, so I'm just going to remove that. It was created by the Bartlett School of Architecture's Unit 17 students in 2016 and exhibited there. And I was living in London between 1998 and about 2015, and so I was familiar with the Bartlett School of Architecture, and I went to see their end of year show, which is where I first learned of the Ghost Chapel. We managed to bring the Ghost Chapel to Galway for the International Arts Festival in 2018, where it sat on Galway's famous Claddagh Quay, with the accompanying exhibition taking time on show at the festival gallery for the duration of the festival. And we had the privilege of having Niall McLaughlin and Michiko Sumi come to Galway for that event and speak to a festival audience and present the project. So working within a studio at the Bartlett School of Architecture, the 7 different students carried out the project from design, inception, procurement through to fabrication. It was uniquely realised through sponsorship, fundraising and collaborative design with structural engineers and concrete manufacturers, and as I mentioned, exhibited at Galway International Arts Festival in 2018. Since graduating, the group of 7 students have all continued the professional architectural practice in various offices in the UK and across the world, but reunited to bring the Ghost Chapel to its intended destination in the west of Ireland for the International Arts Festival in 2018. Oops. Sorry, my slideshow has gone. There we go. This is the team of students. Perhaps some of them are watching this evening, that they were aware that this talk was going ahead. And if you wish to learn more about the unit, you can find it at the email address there at the bottom of the screen. This is Niall McLaughlin with Michiko Sumi when they came to see the installation at its installation when it was installed on the Claddagh Quay. And you can see the list of guest critics that were involved in the project. It was quite an undertaking with not a lot of expertise required. And you can see some of the processes and the construction in later slides. So we'll get to that in a minute. Just to mention about Niall McLaughlin's practice, he's a London-based Irish architect. He set up his practice in 1990. 3 times was shortlisted for the Sterling Prize, most recently in 2018 with the project pictured here, the Sultan Nasreen Shah Centre at Oxford. Also in 2015 for a social housing project in Whitechapel in London, and in 2013 for the Bishop Edward King Chapel at a theological college near Oxford. So one of the most preeminent and accomplished Irish architects, or the architects that this country has ever produced. So a kind of reference, I suppose, there to what Ali mentioned earlier about our diaspora and the influence that has had around globally in raising the reputation regards architecture and engineering around the world. So onto the Ghost Chapel. The Ghost Chapel is based on St. Mcdary's Chapel, which is located on the Mcdary's Island, just off the coast of Connacht here in Connemara. So we've got a map here where you can see the route from Macehead Pier out to the island, just based on the lower left-hand side of your screen as you look at it, and an image of the chapel. Niall McLaughlin's unit, and his practice are very drawn towards natural materials, such as stone and wood, he has a big interest in how architecture has developed and why people have needed architecture over time and the role it plays. They made a connection in the studio between the Ise Shrine, seen here on the left of the screen in Japan, Mcdary's Chapel in the center of the screen, and there's a rendering here of the Ghost Chapel. I'm going to allow, I've got a little video here which I'm going to allow Niall to actually talk a little bit about the connection between the Ise Shrine in Japan and the Mcdary Chapel and how that led to the idea of creating the Ghost Chapel. So I'll just play this for a couple of minutes.
Students was called About Time, how are concepts of time embodied in buildings? Miraculous connection. One of them is Mcdary's Church. And just think about the whole Eurasian continent, and then the Japanese archipelago, and then these islands as an archipelago, and the relationship. Just think about the whole Eurasian continent, and then the Japanese about these islands, and I felt like interesting. The relationship also is constant in Europe. The two buildings originally about this island, and also a disconnect. And the other,
sorry, I'm just going to stop that for a second and reset it.
16th of July for the blessing of the boats. Some years they can't get onto it.
There's an issue there with the video.
We put these two slides up on our disconnect.
I think we've got an issue with the video there, so I'll actually just move on to the slides and see if we can return to that afterwards. So Mcdary's Chapel, as I mentioned, is a 6th century chapel on the island of Mcdary off the coast of Connacht. On the 16th of July every year, hundreds of people make a pilgrimage to the uninhabited island of St. Mcdary's for a celebration of Mass and the blessing of the boats. St. Mcdary was the patron saint of local sailors and is believed to have built this small church on the island in the 6th century. The Ghost Chapel is a direct response to the stone construction of St. Mcdary's Chapel. In recent years, tidal conditions have prevented the sea crossing, and this project has sought to enable this time-honoured tradition to continue. The cast concrete Ghost Chapel is a reconstruction of the mortar joints, the traces of spaces between the stones of Mcdary's Chapel, creating a spectral reflection of the original oratory. Got a couple of archive pictures here of the Féile Mcdary, the Feast of St. Mcdary on the 16th of July, where people take the pilgrimage to the island. These ones from the Dublin City Library's archive, taken in 1943. I took the pilgrimage of the trip myself in July the 16th of 2016 while researching the project. You can see here the island, remote island, uninhabited, and the flotilla boats that carries pilgrims out to the island on the 16th of July. Here we are on the boats, disembarking. There's no pier at the island, so it's the local fishermen that bring people out, and a real sense of community to the whole event. This is why they come out to Mcdary's chapel, and there's an awful lot of archaeological artifacts scattered around the chapel itself. The roof has since been repaired. You might have noticed from the older archive pictures, but you can also see the very fine stonework construction, but it does have echoes of a timber construction, which I think in the video clip that I had of Niall, they looked at the similarities between the construction of the Isa shrine and the cross timbers at the top, and how the language of the chapel here is sort of based on a timber construction. The Isa shrine is this also 1300 years old, but the difference between that and the Mcdary chapel is that the Isa shrine is reconstructed at an enormous cost every, I think it is 20 years. They restart the structure from scratch, so they build a replica and they stop using the old one, and they build a brand new structure, while Mcdary's chapel is built of stone and it's been repaired over time for 1300 years. Just some details of the stonework here, and you can see some of the pilgrims here gathering for the Mass. Some pictures of the Mass that I took in 2016. As I mentioned, if the weather is fine, they bring a timber altar, is transferred over the water in a boat and erected in front of the chapel. The Mass is given as the boats sail around the island in honor of Saint Mcdary, dipping their sails 3 times in the historical superstition as protective belief that it protects the local fishermen to avoid shipwreck. So they still carry this tradition out to this day. It's a very little known festival, even in Galway City, but I think it's like bigger than Christmas Day for the people of Connacht, and their diaspora returns here every year for this event. It's a wonderful event. If you ever get an opportunity to go, I'd recommend it. Some pictures here of the gathering, and all these people ferried out by the local fishermen just for the Mass. And on this particular occasion, it was a glorious day. And here they also have a regatta of the traditional hookers that sail around the island now as part of what's become a festival, essentially. Now, in recent years, it actually hasn't been possible to have this event, and for many, so this is kind of the inspiration behind the project. The gathering of the boats hasn't been able to happen. They haven't, so they were looking for a replacement site, essentially, to hold a Mass, and in some years it was held on the back of a flatbed truck in Connacht, or most recently in front of this lifeboat station at Ard at Macehead, near the village of Connacht. So just a picture of this alternative venue for the celebration of Mass. So this kind of, I suppose, instigated this idea of the potential for what this new space could be, rather than being on the back of a chapel, or the back of a flatbed truck rather. So as a housing really for the Mass to happen. So not only did students think about designing a suppose replica chapel, but also a space for a altar and the backdrop for that as well. So here's some renderings of the chapel and its sort of relationship, echoing the existing chapel on the island beyond. So constructing a ghost, how are we going to go about that? So first of all, the Bartlett School of Architecture is one of the top architectures globally. I think it's in the top 3 architecture schools in the world. They have amazing facilities, robotic facilities, and a team came from the Bartlett and scanned the existing structure to produce these drawings, detailed drawings of the stone structure of the chapel. which then they could actually model how they might recreate the chapel. Now the project was about creating a sort of a structural negative, so it wasn't. It was about the spaces and gaps between the stones and the mortar between the stones rather than the stones themselves. So the drawings were then set out onto a massive, suppose, kind of laser cutter robotic machine, where they used insulation, kind of foam, to cut out the shapes of the stones, and you see some of that process here. So they did a lot of prototyping of the different types of materials that they might use to fill the gaps between the actual cutouts, which you can see in some of the images here. Some of the prototyping processes that were the students tested the ideas at the Bartlett facilities in London. So a glass reinforced concrete was the final material choice. And you see here then the robotically cut out foam installation stones attached to the form work that was eventually going they were going to cast the glass reinforced concrete within that. And some of the students that work here just attaching that to the panels for the casting. Some details here of the stones, of course, all numbered, as you would if you were recreating a chapel from one location and bringing it to another, and the same sort of techniques employed. Exact mapping of the stone construction and then recreating that in insulation board and attaching that to the boards for the formwork. Another picture here then of all the stones attached, and then encased within the hoarding for the formwork, and there was a sort of steel elements to actually hold the whole thing together. Which you see here again, just some more images of the whole process of this. So once it was then cast, they had to actually remove all the foam board installation, so they had to dig all that. And it was a very, very laborious process. Here's some of the team of students that we saw a list of earlier at the top of the presentation. And on the left here is just sort of pouring the glass reinforced concrete down into the formwork. This picture here, I think, really illustrates what the process entails. So once the foam was then had to be removed, once the hoarding, the form work was taken down, and then remove all the insulation material from between the concrete, and you see here this filigree structure that's left behind. So this is the result. It was actually 4 different sections, and I think weighed a total of approaching about 10 tons. And it's an inverted form of the existing chapel, scaled down and absent of stone, leaving only the mortar to form the structure, with the elemental notion of simplicity as applied to the architecture of Mcdary's chapel. The web-like mortar structure is paradoxically, with the complex irregular mortar joints, becomes together to form a singular monolithic piece. The mortar is replicated in glass fiber reinforced concrete, partially supported on a hidden steel frame. Some details of it here, and you can see just on the right-hand side of the picture, just how the structure was bolted together by the steel plates. So, like I say, 4 different individual parts. Now, this was erected at the back of Euston Station in a plot at the former site of the Bartlett College in London, before they moved to their new premises. And it was only on exhibit for a very short time when I saw it in 2016. And the building was set for demolition. So the actual chapel itself would have been ended up being demolished, and it was rescued by the generous support of Galway International Arts festival. In fact, just a week before it would have been lost forever. They saw the potential in this project and the connection between this sort of sense of place that people have here, you know, and the poetic language in the work itself, and how that might sort of be of interest to people, I suppose, here in the west of Ireland. So it was loaded up onto a flatbed truck, and you see here two and of the different sections on the back of the truck here, and the other two sections being loaded. And I actually do think I see Niall and some of the students there in the picture, just sort of preparing that and working out. It's a fragile enough and a very heavy structure, so quite a tricky operation. And this was then being brought off to Galway. And here was the location of the site identified at Galway, the famous Claddagh Basin with the River Corrib, a very historical site itself. And there is a pilgrimage, like I say, to the chapel on the 16th of July every year. And coincidentally, the Galway International Arts Festival was opening on the 16th of July in 2018. So we made some, the students came to Galway, the same student team, and curated the exhibition and installed some information posts along the Claddagh quay here, which led to the chapel located at the end there. Here it is being reassembled opposite the Long Walk in Galway, and one of the boatmen from the Claddagh came to pay homage, as they would, to the church that is in honor of their patron saint, again on the 16th of July. This would have been just before, actually, the 15th of July in 2018. And you can see clearly here visible the steel plates and the holes for the bolts that were going to hold the structure together. This is the team, myself, along with some of the students from the Bartlett School of Architecture and some of the team from Galway International Arts Festival together made this project possible. There's a small video here, again, I'm almost afraid to play it, of the chapel that was taken just early one morning. I suppose is the sense of the ghost-like quality of it as it is in play, but we'll give it a shot. And hopefully you get a sense of the project looked like. This was, I think, taken at the time-lapse motion camera. But what was interesting was we created a bed of stones underneath the chapel, just to sort of as a footing, I suppose, as it were, because it just sat on the grass. But what was interesting was the way people interacted with the chapel. They all picked up some of these stones and placed them within the voids, into the spaces and onto the lips and the sort of shells, I suppose, of the structure itself. Now, this was sort of, it wasn't the intention, it was just accidentally what people did, especially young children. You see a child here of the cameraman that did this, and it was just a beautiful way that people interacted with it, a bit like you know, where people climb a mountain or whatever sometimes, or they go to a chapel on pilgrimage and they bring a stone and they leave it at the peak of the chapel of the mountain, or on the altar of an old chapel. And you just see that they actually just did this here as well, which was a beautiful thing. It wasn't intended. We didn't invite people to do this. They just did it themselves. It was just a wonderful sort of magical thing that sort of happened. So again, just a few pictures of the chapel here as it was installed for the Galway International Arts Festival for 2 weeks. And it was an absolute triumph. Thousands of people came to see it and also to visit the exhibition at the festival gallery, which sort of showed the construction processes. And Niall McLaughlin himself and Mishko came to deliver a talk to an audience there about the project. If you do hashtag Ghost Chapel, you will see the literally hundreds of pictures that people took of the chapel during its time installed on the in the Claddagh Quay, and I'd encourage you to go and do that. A really good shot here of the materiality and the form of it. The components and the detail of the junction was reduced to its pure essentials with the ambition the structure to inhabit the landscape for millennia. Since then, it's been actually sadly in storage for the last 4 years at a warehouse in Moycullen, but the original intention was that following the festival that it would be continue its pilgrimage to location in Connemara, finally settling on the coastline near Ard, near Carna, to become a new marker in the landscape and to connect to the original chapel across the water on the island of St. Mcdary, so that it could be used for those occasions where the weather didn't allow for the mass, and it would still be hoped that that might be possible. The project wouldn't have happened without the generous support of all these people here to see it happen. I think the cost was estimated associated cost would have been about £20,000 sterling, and that didn't include the curation and the project support that came from Galway International Arts Festival to see it installed in the Claddagh. It actually was depicted on a stamp in the 80s, as you see here, and just some pictures of the tapestry that was actually installed within the structure, this beautiful tapestry, which was sort of inspired by the lichen that you see on the top of the church, and you see on all the rocks here in the west of Ireland, and that illuminates the interior of the chapel. It's this lovely light when on certain occasions. And then some details here of the large altar that they created, and which the tapestry would be stored within in the interior of that, and then that would be brought out again on the boat for the Féile Mcdary and for the festival itself. And an illustration or rendering here of the tapestry, how it could be stored within the altar piece itself, and just some student work on that. There's a really lovely picture of it here installed at the back of the Bartlett for the exhibition in 2016, and actually linking back to Niall McLaughlin's practice, a recent project that he's been working on, the Auckland Castle project, County Durham, and you see here a reference, I suppose, to the Mcdary Chapel within Niall McLaughlin's own work as well. And just want to say thank you to everyone at the Bartlett School of Architecture, particularly the students of Unit 17 from 2016, Niall McLaughlin Architects, and Michiko Sumi, and Galway International Arts Festival, and our funders, the Arts Council, for making the project possible. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frank. Very inspiring project, and I loved what was shown there in the video of Niall saying that, talking about concepts of time embedded in buildings. Really, really nice, nice phrase.